Hey guys, Swift here, breaking down Bears offensive tackle and the first of our fifth round picks this season, Braxton Jones. These scouting reports take a ton of work and watching more than just a full season of tape, so please hit that like button for me. It really helps get the video out there for other fans to see. The fifth round of this year's draft is where polls began making moves. He was wheeling and dealing and turned 6 draft picks into 11. The Bucks stopped when he finally stopped trading back and took offensive tackle Braxton Jones out of Southern Utah. Foles made his first draft pick of what turned out to be many on the offensive line. Braxton is a 6'6", 310 athletic monster with long 35-inch arms and a massive wingspan. He has the looks of a future left tackle in the NFL. He has 29 career starts and dominated FCS competition. He was first team All Big Sky and first team All FCS. I watched his entire 2021 season on film and listened to every interview of his I could find. First up, let's get into his strengths and weaknesses. Jones is extremely athletic, explosive, quick out of his stance. He has strong hands and great arm length. He plays with tenacity and has a mean streak. He often dominated against his competition with pure size and athletic ability. He has excellent footwork both in pass sets and in the run game on the move. He is very agile for his size and works to keep his feet moving at all times. He has an impressive frame and ideal arm length for an NFL tackle. He uses his explosiveness and power paired with his long arms to generate quite a punch. He recognizes alignments and blitzes, which shows great IQ and awareness. He is coachable, smart, and a hard worker. He really loves to finish blocks. He has a nastiness to his game and plays with the demeanor you want from an offensive lineman. He has the attitude and play style to dominate. He will need time to transition into the NFL and bulk up, but he has all the tools and traits coaches dream of in an offensive tackle. He has all the skills to play tackle in the NFL. But what about his weaknesses? He's on his toes too much in pass protection. This can cause him to lose strength when he needs to anchor. He plays with his waist bent and gets caught lunging too often. I think Jones also needs to get a little stronger, and time in an NFL weight room will do him wonders. He doesn't generate much of a push off the line even with his explosiveness, but he can anchor and slide in the run protection. Also, I initially thought his strength was a major concern, but after studying film and watching the combine, I think that a lot of his lack of power issues I saw are due to poor technique, which brings me to what I think his actual biggest issue is. That's his technique. He has the athleticism, the size, strength, and foot speed to be an excellent pass blocker and even play left tackle in the NFL. However, his technique needs a ton of work right now. He plays on his toes too much, he opens his hips up, and he can get exposed by skilled pass rushers. He's caught on tape too often lunging and bending at his waist, which I mentioned earlier, but he also loses balance and power because of these issues. I think day one, Braxton will be a better run blocker than he is pass blocker because of his footwork, hand placement, explosion, and high IQ all translate well to the NFL. He is much more powerful than I initially thought. He just really needs to refine his technique in order to take full advantage of that power. My favorite part of Jones' game, other than the way he aggressively dominated lower competition, was how he understands and uses leverage to his advantage. For a guy who can occasionally play with his pad level too high, he really does understand leverage. The reason he was able to dominate lower competition without advanced technique was due to a combination of traits. One, he has the size and athleticism of an NFL tackle. Two, he is smart and works hard to not lose reps or regain control if he takes a misstep or loses a rep. Three, he combines his athleticism, strength, and IQ with an incredible ability to not only understand but take advantage of leverage. Braxton Jones is a very smart football player and is incredibly coachable. I think he has the talent to start from day one, but his potential as a future NFL tackle is what intrigues me the most. So let's talk about his long-term potential in Chicago. Braxton Jones is a guy who can come in and compete for a tackle job this year. Right now, he's a better run blocker, but after coaches have time to work on his technique and he gets more time in the weight room, I think Jones will eventually be an elite pass blocker. I think he can play left tackle or right tackle and shouldn't be pigeonholed into either one. He has all the tools you want in a tackle prospect and has a lot of long-term value. He could be a starting tackle as early as this year. He could be a long-term left tackle prospect as well. Or he could be our swing tackle for a number of years. His potential is through the roof. He has every tool you could want in a developmental guy, and he should stick around in the NFL for a long time. How does he fit the Bears this year? Judging fit on our offensive line is going to be hard. He is a perfect fit for an outside zone scheme, but could eventually fit any scheme in the NFL. If we run outside zone like some people predict, then I think Jones has a chance to compete for a starting spot day one. Without going too much into scheme, I will tell you why he fits better for an outside zone. Outside zone requires linemen to block horizontally instead of vertically, meaning they block from left to right instead of north and south. Jones' footwork and acceleration really stand out when he was asked to block down like that in college. His technique will require more work in other schemes, but he has the potential to be a starting tackle on the left or right side in any scheme. I recorded most of this breakdown before Adam John's report about us switching to an outside zone scheme, and I think Jones is a perfect fit for this scheme, and he should now challenge for a day one starting position. Just think about that for a moment. If Poles lands his starting left tackle in the late 5th round with all these other picks he's made, this is going to be a home run. And now let's get into the grades. First up are his measurables. He's 6'6", 310 pounds with quick feet. He has 35-inch arms and all the traits you want from an NFL tackle. I give him a solid 9.0 in measurables. Athleticism. The combine really showcased Jones' athleticism. He's a long strider with a sub-5 40-yard dash and has nice explosion off the line. Combine that with the prototypical size of an NFL offensive tackle, and I give him the solid 9.2 for athleticism. Then we get to his run blocking. Jones is a solid run blocker already, but his ceiling isn't much higher than where he is now. He understands running lanes and how to use leverage to open up gaps for running backs. He has great hand strength and foot speed to be a good run blocker. His biggest issue in this area is he lacks the strength to get much push off the line, even with his explosion, and his overall technique still needs some work. I give him a 7.3. Pass blocking is the area where I think Braxton has the most potential. Jones has everything you want in a pass blocking project. He's athletic, with long arms, quick feet, a wide base, high IQ, and he understands leverage. Only problem is his technique might need to be rebuilt from the ground up. With the right coaching and hard work, Braxton should be a great pass blocker in the future. Overall, for pass blocking, I give him a 7.4. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about his technique. As mentioned previously, Jones understands leverage and has good hand placement. He has great foot speed too, but his overall technique is very sloppy. His technique did improve a bit over last season and looks slightly better still at the combine. He still plays with his pad level too high, and he bends at the waist way more than you like to see. He relied a bit too much on leverage and elite athleticism to dominate his lesser opponents. He has all the traits, but his technique needs a lot of work. Overall, I give him a 6.3 on technique. Now I'm going to get to his overall grade. Overall, Braxton Jones has all the traits you look for in a left tackle. Most scouts gave him a round 3 grade, and it's surprising he wasn't snatched up a bit earlier based on his traits alone. I did not grade his fit because we aren't 100% sure what Getsy's scheme will look like, even though we have heard it's going to be an outside zone scheme. I think he would be a perfect fit for that kind of scheme. His technique needs work, but you have to love everything else in the package. He blocks to the whistle. He has a mean streak. He's smart, big, and athletic. I think Braxton Jones is a perfect fit as a developmental left tackle prospect. He has the chance to start early in his career, but letting him learn and refine his technique could be even better for his future. I'm unsure whether he ends up on the left or right side, but I do see him as a future starting tackle and give him an overall grade of a 7.9 out of 10. Now I want to break down our tackle position now that we have Braxton Jones and what it means for this season. One thing that stuck out the most when looking at all the tackles we have on the roster now was arm length. It's a quality that most NFL tackles have. The average arm length for NFL tackle is 34 inches, while around 33-inch arms seems to be about the minimum for a tackle. Larry Borom and Tevin Jenkins' arm length both clock in just over the minimum but below the NFL average. Jenkins has 33.5-inch arms and Borom has 33 1/8-inch arms. So what about the four offensive tackles that Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham have brought in? First one they signed was Julian Davenport, who has 36.5-inch arm length. Then they drafted Braxton Jones, who has 35-inch arms. Then we signed Gene DeLance, who has 36.5-inch arms, and also recently added Sean Coleman, who has 35 1/8-inch arms. That's right, all four tackles that Ryan Poles has signed has had over 35-inch arms. My first thought is, what does this mean for Jenkins and Borom? Does it mean they don't fit the prototype that Poles is looking for? It's very possible. I do think Poles would be crazy not to evaluate what he has in each of those guys, though, which explains why he has tried moving them around. After this evaluation, I actually think it's very possible that Tevin Jenkins will be our starting right tackle this season, with an open competition between Larry Borom and four guys with 35-plus-inch arms in Jones, Davenport, Coleman, and DeLance, all competing for that left tackle spot. May the best man win. That is obviously still up in the air, and there's a lot of evaluation time left between now and the end of the preseason. If I had to guess today, though, that is what I believe based on everything I have studied. I think most likely what Eberflus said is true. They don't know who the starters are anywhere on the line other than maybe left guard and center with Whitehair and Lucas Patrick. They will use every bit of time they have between now and the season opener versus the 49ers to find out if they have a guy capable of playing left tackle that's not named Tevin Jenkins. If they don't, then it's quite possible we add another veteran as we get close to week one. One thing is clear when it comes to offensive tackles. Foles likes athletic guys with long arms. This might not be a great sign for Larry Borom, who has the shortest arms of any tackle on the roster, but he does have decent athleticism regardless of what people think. So I wouldn't count Larry Borom out just yet. What up, guys? Swifty here with your boy Jordan T Silveira. You know him, he's been on here before. He doesn't need that much of an introduction. I will let him introduce himself in a second. We're talking about Braxton Jones today. You guys watching the video now have just seen my breakdown on Braxton Jones and what I think. So Jordan, first I want to talk, based on what we've talked about a little bit already, I know he's not your favorite player, but let me hear some of your positives or what you think are the strengths of Braxton Jones games or what fans can look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody, Jordan T Silveira on Twitter. You've seen me on the channel before. As I was telling Swifty, I mean, the one area of the field that I really study and feel like I'm more proficient in than others is the trenches, and that's D line and O line play. To me, when we're talking about the strengths of Braxton Jones, first off, you love the traits. I mean, the guy's got good footwork. Obviously, he's got the immensely long arms, really good size all around. It's what you're looking for in the ideal build of a tackle, and then you combine some of the speed, the short area burst, and it builds into what you're looking for with the zone tackle, ideally. Now, of course, he was playing at the lower level, but when I think about his strengths, I mean, first off, on a holistic level, I think he's a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker. I know we may differ a little bit on that, and we can talk about the the efficacy of what he'll be able to do in the league as a pass blocker when he has to go up against NFL talent, NFL rushers who have multiple moves on their hands. But some of the things that I love about his game is he is quick off the ball. And I encourage anybody that has, tape, and I know you'll have some and things of that nature here, but if you want to go back and watch Southern Utah tape, just pause it by the milliseconds and watch when the ball is snapped. You will see Braxton Jones move off the ball before any of his other offensive linemen. And that is, what it reminds me of is it reminds me of Tevin Jenkins, and you can go back and watch his Oklahoma State tape where that level of explosiveness and jump setting opponents. Football is a game of leverage. The whole idea is you need to get to your spot and have beat the leverage game before your other opponent does. And with their ability to jump set and get into position, get into that kick step and get a wide base, it allows him to set up defenders and create whatever he wants. Do I want to push you around the arc and set the corner? Or do I want to, step out and let you play in and then I'll ultimately snatch your hands and get a pancake? I think he has some of that. Now, the other thing I really like about him is I think that he's pretty, I wouldn't say he's as toolsy as Tevin Jenkins, but I think that he's shown some ability with his hand usage in pass pro, which is why I feel more inspired that I trust him in the pass pro game. And then in the run blocking game, because he's so athletic and he's got those long arms, I think he lacks a little bit of play strength. But the thing I love about Braxton Jones is you're talking about a zone scheme where the whole idea is you need to turn a man. He's got those. I'm going to kind of play with the camera here a little bit. He's got those long arms to get on the outside shoulder pad of a defensive lineman. And he's like got those Gumby arms where he basically reaches around, grabs the outside shoulder pad, and then turns the defender so that now he's in a position where I've turned you and he's got the footwork to follow through to where instead of just having the arm around here, he's now here able to position from having that grip strength to turn the man. And then now all of a sudden we're mirroring. I'm here, you're here, and the running back can come right off my backside here.
That's one thing I loved about, and that's why I know we differ a little bit. We talked about this briefly before, where I said I think right now, day one, I think he may be slightly better run blocker than he is pass blocker, and that's something I want to clarify a little bit. I think with the right coaching, and I think we should have the right coaching. If our coaching staff can correct some of his techniques, I think he could be a much better pass blocker than run blocker by the time the season starts. But that's after going through a long training camp and preseason and working on the technique that is so raw right now. I think as of today is where I would say I think he's slightly better run blocker, and his pass block technique needs work, but he has a much higher ceiling as a pass blocker. A guy who I think potentially could be an elite pass blocker, and that's why I said I think he could play left tackle. I think he could play right tackle, and this is something that I didn't get to touch on much in my video because it wasn't announced really yet, but I have been predicting it and talking about it. Assumed all along we were going to run a Shanahan style scheme, but now Adam Johns has already reported he was there at OTAs. He watched what they were doing all week, and he's saying they're running an outside zone scheme. So I think Braxton Jones is a perfect fit for that scheme. Do you have any thoughts on, now that we know, potentially confirmed at least, what scheme we might be running? Do you think that changes your opinion on Braxton Jones at all, or anything you see that translates well?
No, it's the right fit for him. Which I mean, when you start looking at a lot of the offensive linemen and the players that they've drafted, it's all kind of, as you've said, been alluding to this. And I think now we're just getting some confirmation. Personally, when it was rookie minicamp and they were interviewing Treston Ebner, he had talked about, oh yeah, I kind of understand this playbook. I'm used to wide zone, and he was kind of confirming it beforehand. So I was like, okay, well, we're starting to kind of get the little pebbles to confirm it, and it's obviously with Adam Johns talking about it, it seems all but confirmed. And when you look at the players that they've drafted, Braxton Jones included, I just, one of the things I said is that I don't think he has a ton of manpower strength. He's not a big moving people off the ball displacement. He did it obviously somewhat at the lower levels at Southern Utah, but trying to move like a Levi Owanzurike or any of these five techs, these big maulers, think of like a Roy Robertson Harris even. Trying to get a guy like that off the ball, I don't think is necessarily his forte. But the beautiful part is this isn't a gap scheme. This isn't him needing to generate displacement running duo or power or trap or anything like that. And this is what it was so beautiful about his Southern Utah tape is he used his athleticism to his advantage. And when you're talking, we agree here in that I think his pass pro, the area that lacks is some of the technique. He's a two-hand puncher, doesn't utilize C punches, tends to let people into his chest, doesn't play high, things of that nature. But we're talking about the positives here, and the ways that he got around at the lower level. And this is what I think Ryan Poles is betting on: is you can't coach the arm length, you can't coach the quick feet, you can't coach the size.
Can't
You
coach
can
that
coach a
size.
guy. Yeah, you can coach a guy to lower his pads. You can coach a guy to get comfortable pushing with his outside hand and being able to counter with the other hand in the inside and things of that nature. So the thing that plays to his benefit in this zone scheme is, hey, just be athletic, get those feet moving, take that long arm, get it around the corner, get that grip strength, and turn a guy, and just hold it down, set a lane so that Ebner or Herbert or Montgomery or Evans can sit there and choose. Am I coming off of Braxton Jones's backside, Jenkins, Patrick's? Because that's the whole idea here with this outside zone scheme is you're getting ultimately a front side of the play, the play side, with the opportunity to cut it back in whatever lane the running back determines is the best route, which is we don't want to give a running back just two options. Hey, take it front side, play side, or cut it back. It's no, let's give him multiple lanes. And so if you're doing it right, every offensive lineman in a perfect world, and of course it's never quite perfect, but in a perfect world, every offensive lineman would be able to essentially have a perfect wall where their backside or their back would essentially line up to where you just have lanes. It's like, hey, which lane do you want to go through? And then you just cut it back up.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, looking at the offense this year, like we are going to run the ball a lot. I think it's a thing. I actually think Khalil Herbert might be a little bit better fit for that outside zone scheme, but that's something we'll talk about some other time. Um, I like Khalil Herbert a lot. But yeah,
You're gonna upset the David
I
Montgomery
know
supporters.
I don't want to upset the Demo fans out there. I'm always careful with that. I'm like I can't upset the Demo fans. But back to Braxton Jones. Yeah, you mentioned a few of the things. I love his athleticism. I love his foot speed. Footwork might need a little bit of work. Like I said, he's on his toes a bit too much and kind of a little almost too light on his feet, and that can cause him to lose leverage and not be able to anchor. And I think he potentially has more strength than he shows on tape sometimes because he was just dominating competition, using his size, using his athleticism, using his giant wingspan, and was just dominating people. When you look at this Bears offensive line right now, I think you prefer Larry Borum over him, but judging not just what you think here, okay? What do you think when the Bears are looking at this offensive line, and we're talking today just strictly at the tackle position? I think Tevin Jenkins obviously has one of those spots locked up. I think it's his to go. And then the other spot, you got Braxton Jones, you got Larry Borum, you got Gene Delance, the free agent, you got Sean Coleman, the other guy we signed, and you got Julian Davenport. Give me, without going too into depth on why, give me your top three guys, your favorite, your second guy, and then the third guy you think who would start at that opposite position of Tevin Jenkins.
I'll throw you for a little bit of a loop here because, like, I mean, we got to keep it kind of light and fun. My number one choice would be Dwayne Brown, and I've said that for a
Oh,
while
no,
now.
no, no, no. You can't include Dwayne Brown. He
I
doesn't
know, and here's the
count.
thing:
No.
I understand Ryan Poles will not touch a player over 30. He's allergic to them. They all have to be 24-year-old,
He's over
four.
35. Yeah, man. You know.
Yeah, no, they all have to be 5-year starters at college to be on this team. I'm
Mm-hmm.
kidding, but so that's kind of the fun joke. As far as number one, and again, we're talking. I'll line it out briefly. My choice. I'm not GM, so it doesn't matter. But I would put Bourne would be my number one guy. Then probably Braxton Jones. Then we could talk about like a Delance or something like that. I'm not a huge Davenport fan. Davenport to me is akin to like a Storm Norton. Like you're not in a great spot if that's your starter. So he's fine. I wouldn't put him in my top three. But as far as like again what you said, I'm just a fanalist out of Mr. McCaskey's. I'm just a fan, not a football evaluator. So in that case, if I'm Ryan Poles, as much as I love Borum, I think that there was a reason why he decided, look, I'm going to trade back and lose a Khalil Shakir or Thomas Booker, and my first pick above, I could have had Zachary Thomas, I could have had other players, I could have had Lasita Smith, I could have had Marquise Hayes, but the one player he wanted, Braxton Jones,
Yep.
and Braxton Jones is the guy that fits. I mean, I know you're going into this in the video here is the whole idea of every guy has over 35-inch arms and they're athletic freaks and former basketball players. And if this was his number one guy after trading back and he said, look, I'm planting the stake in the ground. I'm not trading back anymore. I'm taking Braxton Jones. I think that's probably his number one guy. Now, it's early. It's May. We're going to see what happens in training camp. Sure, if Braxton Jones blows the doors off and he's the best technician and he's truly part of the best five players, he'll start. But I also think that Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham, they understand that the offensive line, it all starts there, at least for the offense. And the idea is they're not going to let a bad offensive line derail what Justin Fields can be. So if Braxton Jones isn't ready, I wouldn't rule out them going to go get a veteran, acquiring a guy that's, like, I'll give you an example. I don't think it's going to happen because I thought the Jets may have taken a tackle, but there's been a lot of what's going on with Mekhi Becton in New York.
I
And if
would
for some
love that
reason,
move. Oh man.
yeah,
Yeah.
like if for some
Bring
reason
him
Mekhi
over.
Becton fell out of favor, not that I think he's going to sit there and say, here's a second round pick, but I don't know. For whatever reason, they go, hey, we'll package Borum and Quinn for Becton because Jermaine Johnson got hurt or whatever the case. Carl Lawson's not coming back at the right speed. I could see something like that happening if Braxton Jones weren't ready. But in a perfect world, he's looking at it like nothing would make him happier as GM if his fifth round pick was a starter day one at left tackle, was holding it down for Justin Fields.
Yeah, I didn't even
And he's
think
this
about that
athletic
angle.
beast.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's this athletic beast that's got good footwork and he's walling people off. And Montgomery's cutting off the backside of it. Like, yeah, that's the
They're
Cinderella
like, we
story.
found this guy in the fifth round and he came in. Yeah, and that would make this draft class. I mean, you look at it overall, if regardless of what happens with the earlier guys, but if it happens, like, Brisker and Kyler Gordon are hits, Bayless Jones is at least a weapon, two or three wide receiver. And then you get Braxton Jones without even getting into the rest of the guys. If Zachary
Yeah.
Thomas is also a day one starter, your seventh round punter is also probably going to be a starter day one. I think Elijah Hicks has the chance to be a future free safety. There's a lot of potential in this class, but the big one, yeah, if Braxton Jones comes out, becomes our left tackle, that's going to be a huge win for Poles, and I do think it is a possibility. That's an awesome take. So you do think that's pretty high. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to get out there on Braxton Jones?
Yeah, I think it's a bigger point with the entire Chicago Bears offensive line, and Lucas Patrick, who's becoming easily a fan favorite at this point, I think put it best, which is that the whole idea, and you can certainly see Ian Cunningham and Ryan Poles buy into this, is we don't really care about the names. And I really believe he means this. Like, if it's Tevin Jenkins and Larry Borum that are the best tackles, awesome. Kudos to Ryan Pace for getting me those pieces. And I'm sure, yes, in some selfish way, he'd like his guys to be the one, but I think it's really about the idea of just get the five best guys out there. And that's the whole idea of getting. I question some of the process, and I would have liked certain players better. But again, Fanalist, that's my board, not the Bears board. But when you look at the situation, when they draft Kramer and Carter and Jones and Thomas, you look at that, and the whole idea is we want competition at every spot. Yeah, Lucas Patrick, you're the starter per se, you're the veteran, but you signed a 2-year deal and it wasn't some record breaker. If Kramer comes in and he's better than you, he'll play. And Cody Whitehair, you're on notice. If for some reason Carter's kicking ass in camp and you're not, Carter's going to play. And Jenkins, if that back is still a problem and you look like you're getting your ass kicked the way that you were getting kicked, and I love Tevin Jenkins. I understand there's reasons for why he's getting beat, but the best five are going to play. And either you're there and you're a starter because you're legit, or you're not. And that's the thing that we've kind of talked about with Cunningham and Poles is that they are at the base level. You can clearly see they don't value the receiver position as much as other teams. But at the base level, the one thing that they're not going to allow is for there to be a weak link on the offensive line that's going to derail everything that's going on the offense.
Yeah, that's one thing that I feel like hasn't been touched on enough is we didn't bring in a big name offensive line, so you hear a lot like we didn't do anything for this offensive line. We brought in a Packers backup and we drafted some day three guys, and everyone makes it seem like we didn't do anything for this offensive line. But when I look at this offensive line as a whole, in the top 9 or 10 players that should make the roster, it's deeper, it's more athletic, and it's better than any line we've had in the last 5 to 10 years. And that's with possibly 4 to 5 rookies on there. And you got to think that that's only going to get better in the future. Those guys will get better in time, and then also they're going to add more to this team in later years. But yeah, it's exciting, man. It's exciting. Jordan, always appreciate having you on, man. Any final words for the fans?
Yeah, let me just kind of end with this one final idea here, and this is something I maybe you can spread the word. I'll try to spread the word with my limited following, but I want fans to kind of just take this and run with it because it's just the truth, which is that I know it's at every position, not just offensive line of the narrative. We didn't do anything there, and the thing is that just take a step back. And I know you'll hear from people like Adam Ho, like, "Oh, the scheme is going to fix everything." I'm not even here to tell you that. But the general idea that the previous regime, it didn't matter really who they drafted. We never, I think it's really fair to say, you never truly got to see what any player could have been because there was such a lack of development. So, as much as we may be ready to say, Cole Kmet's not that guy, Tevin Jenkins, Larry Borum, any, trying to think of any of the other players that have been on this team, Justin Fields, if there's any doubters of him, things of that nature. You can always go back, and I mean this, and I think it's true. Is it fair to judge any of these players under the Nagy scheme? Like, yeah, you think you know what Tevin Jenkins is, or you think you know what Borum is, or David Montgomery, Darnell Mooney. But what does it look like if there's just competency? I'm not saying Kyle Shanahan's calling the plays, but just like, what if they actually say, hey, Tevin, we know you haven't had practice because you didn't have a camp. Your first rep, we're not going to put you on empty protection against Preston Smith. We're going to actually give you a real solid chip. Hey, Justin, we're going to actually have you boot, but we're going to send a sift block from Komet to block off TJ Watt on the backside so that when you turn around, TJ Watt's not all up in your face. Like, just imagine if things like that happen. What does the offense look like? What does every player look like? So, as much as it's they didn't add good talent, what happens when it's just cohesive?
Yeah, and that's a beautiful point, man. And that's one of the things I've thought about a lot when you look at what this team's going to look like moving forward. And it's people are like, oh, they didn't do anything to offense. The biggest thing we could do for this offense was getting Nagy, his terrible play calling and no identity, and throwing players under the bus and just getting that out of here. And it can't be understated how much our offense can improve just from having, and just like you said, it doesn't have to be, Etsy doesn't have to be the next Kyle Shanahan. If he's just average, league average, 15th to 18th in the NFL, he's going to be 10 times better than Nagy, and our offense is going to improve by leaps and bounds. And I'm so
What
excited,
if
man.
he's Nick Sirianni? What if he's Clint Kubiak? Like, again, these are
Exactly.
just
Yep.
middle of the road guys,
Just
but
middle of the road. That's all we need, man, for sure. Well, as always, man, Jordan, I appreciate having you on, man. Always a blast talking football with you, man. Bear down.
you as well, Swifty. It's always a pleasure to kind of hang out, talk Bears football with you, and fans, people watching the video. Thanks for kind of listening in, and you can find me at Jordan T Silveira on Twitter, but you can count on me and Swifty kind of doing more content talking about the Bears that we all love. Bear down.
Yo, guys, thank you so much for watching. Anybody who's stuck around this long, hit that like button. It helps this video get out there for more people, and I appreciate it so much. I got a ton more content coming, including breaking down the rest of the rookies. Memberships are now live on the channel as well. You guys are more than welcome to join up if you want that extra Swifty coverage. You guys know that I like to include something at the end. For those of you that stuck around this long, all I have to say about that little clip coming up is, um, until next time, guys, bear down. But, um, strict,
Um,
um, um, um,
uh,
but, um, um,
um,
um, um,
uh,
but, um, um,
um,
um, um, um,
uh,